Right then, guys. Bit of bad news. This is my barrel and piston from my scooter. And we have suffered catastrophic engine failure. Look, everything might appear normal, but wait till you see the top of this piston. Look at that. Absolutely fucked. The barrel itself, amazingly, seems to have got away absolutely scot-free. There's a tiny little nick on the exhaust port inside there, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Yeah, so I've got footage of this actually happening, so have a little look. This is what it's like when your scooter proper dies on you. So, not good. Not good at all. It's a very expensive problem that I have now been presented with. I've actually been... This is an MB RT195 kit BGM. As you probably know. So I've actually been over there to speak to him and just say, look, this is what's happened. What do you think might have caused it? And so on and so forth. I actually spoke to Mark Broadhurst himself and his other guy who works in, I can't remember his name, but they're really helpful. And they had a good look at it for me, and we've established, or one of them sort of thought that it looked like one of the bearings, either the small end or the big end. Let me just show you. This is the small end bearing, is that little bearing there, which goes in there. But you also have the big end bearing, which is in here. And this is obviously right inside the engine. And I wasn't sure if it was or not. And he said, well, you're going to have to go back and just sort of move the conrod up and down a bit, which I've done over here on mine. I know it's quite dark over here. I don't know if you know what to see, but the amount of play that you've got back and forth there and all around, really, it just rocks about. And that indicates that it is indeed the big end bearing. So, it's going to be a pretty lengthy job to get this sorted. So I'm going to have to basically do is strip this engine now, drain all the oil, and that crankcase side will have to come off, obviously. And I'm going to have to undo all the front sprocket and all that, which is attached to the crank. Go around the other side, take the flywheel off, take that out, remove the seals, get the crank out, and then... you can go two ways with it. You can sort of get a crank repressed, as they call it. They take it and split it and put you a new bearing and put it all back together again, which isn't cheap, but it's cheaper than a new crank. So I think I'm going to end up doing that and buy a new piston. But they've actually run out of stock of the standard size piston, which is what I need. I mean, I don't need anything bigger. It's fine, is that? It's just that these are getting hard to get hold of already, which are a bit, like, thought, oh my god, what am I going to do? But he said you can use other pistons such as Asso and Wassner, make a piston that would suit, but he didn't have any of them either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip it, get the crank out, take it to Chisel Speed in Leeds there, and see what he's got for me, see if he'll take the barrel with me and everything, and get him to get me a piston that's going to suit. So it's going to be like I say, a lengthy and arduous task, really, to remove a crank from the scoot. I'm a bit devastated. I don't know if you can tell. So that's it, really. I can't fault them guys over there. It's not a problem with the kit at all. I don't want anyone to think that. It really isn't. It's not something to do with this kit specifically. It's my crank that I had in that's failed. And once the bearing all shatters and collapses, all bits of it just come out of the little oil groove and stuff. I think there's a decent oil groove on the other one that's in there, but it's a while since I've seen it. And that's it. So it'll have flown up, most likely, I guess, because this all happens down this end of everything. The crank's right down here. I'm assuming that it's sort of shattered and then it's shot up the transfer ports. The little bits of it have all just shot up there into the barrel, and then the pistons just rammed it really hard up and down and smashed it all into the head. But luckily, he said this can be reused. He goes, in all fairness, you could put that back on and reuse it immediately without doing anything. He goes, but obviously you want to try and remove some of these, because all that's really going to happen is that's going to make it really easy for carbon to build up, because it's not smooth. It'll all just get into the grooves and you straight get coked up straight away. Like that is already actually, but the head's quite clear. So he says don't take too much off because it'll affect the the squish and the compression and stuff. But I'm just going to get rid of the high spots on that, and then all being well, it can be reused. So that's it. So it's just an update really for you. But at least I had it on camera, so you can watch that little video again if you want and see what it's like. That's what it's like when your engine totally fails. Luckily, it didn't nip up or anything like that, because in certain cases that can just be moving, then it'll just stop. It'll just jam in because it's got so hot it's expanded and all melted, and it'll just stick, which would mean the crank, which is driving the back wheel, just jams like that, and the back wheel locks up, and you end up where you have to pull the clutch in really quickly, or just do an enormous skid, which is likely to throw it back end out and sling you off. So luckily that didn't happen, and I'm all right. There were no one's injured, no one's anything. I'm just a bit pissed off, as I'm sure you can imagine. But yeah, so that's it. So I'm going to get the crank out and have a look, and see where we get with it. But yeah, I'm a little bit lost for words, to be honest. I really am. Right, guys, just a quick look at this before you go, oh, puss. Go on then. Oh no. Come on. This is my neighbour's cat that's come in to give me a hand. Oh no, he's off. Right, I've got it out. I've done it. Got the crank off. It's no easy task in that. I was towing a bit here and there. Stuff like this. This is the magneto housing, where the stator plate, etc. goes. Because that's been on so very long, it was just a nightmare to get back out. You've got these two screw holes, bolt hole things, and when you tighten them up, it pushes against these points here and here, and it draws it off, but I ain't got the correct tools for that, so I had to just sort of put bolts in and just wind them on, a bit at the top, bit at the bottom, until it came away. Bit of a nightmare, but done it. So this is the crank anyway, and this is the problem. I don't know if you can see that, but that is just incredible. And if you look through the gap, I realise this will be quite difficult to see. You can see that there's a few of the roller bearings are there with the little cage bits at the side of them. I'm hoping you can see this. But then you've just got a big gap where there's no cage, and it goes round and round, and then you just end up with a load of bearings sort of stacked together. So it was definitely that. So, hello puss. So that's it. So what I'm going to do is take this crank to chisel speed there, get him to, well, I'll get some advice of him, see if he thinks it's worth doing, but in theory he should be able to put this into the machine, push that pin out, split the two sides, put a new bearing in there, and put it all back in. And all being well, that should be alright. It should be usable again for another loads of miles. I mean, I've done about 20,000 miles using this crank. And as you know, I don't really take it easy most of the time. So, as I say, that's it. That's it. So that's all I'm going to do for tonight. I'm going to wash up a bit, tidy up a bit, and go to the pub for a bit. Right, so that really is it. So I will keep you updated after I've been over to see what I can do with this crank, if anything. Otherwise, it's buy another one and buy another piston for that. Put it all back together, and in theory, I could be riding it again in a couple of days, provided he's got all the bits I need to hand. I was considering changing the bearing while I was at it, because this bearing's obviously been in as long as the crank, but I'm not sure. I mean, it feels all right, but that one felt all right for long enough, and then it collapsed. So I'll see what the guy says over there anyway. And if need be, I'm going to have to remove all that and put a new one in. But I feel a lot better, to be honest. You always feel better once you've got something done, you know, and you feel like you're moving towards it being fixed. So, cheers to that, boys, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.